Friends, welcome again this morning. This is the final session of the conception that I had for these 4 steps. This is the one that's called action. Action with perseverance and sacrifice, as we've heard from the very first outline of these steps that Shoghi Effendi was repeating over and over in this last couple of years of his life. We've had many examples of sets of principles. We've had, as was mentioned yesterday by Sala, the advent of divine justice, which outlines the rectitude of conduct and chastity of life and freedom from prejudice. Those are also essential prerequisites for teaching. But this is a kind of a condensed one. And it gives me pleasure to repeat these things. I'm trying to learn them myself along the way here. So when you think of action, what do you think of first?
Prayer.
Prayer? Okay. Anything else? First action is prayer. That's very good. Nobody ever says that. Can I ask that question?
Service.
Serving. Yeah. And the essence of service, the most important service, teaching, obviously, comes to that. Teaching. Harking back to the words of Baha'u'llah with respect to what our responsibilities. He said, this is quoted, both of these passages are quoted in the Gleanings. Teach ye the cause of God, O people of Baha, for God hath prescribed unto everyone the duty of proclaiming his message, and regardeth it as the most meritorious of all deeds. Again he says, arise, whoso ariseth. I've been asking in schools, just very modestly, to pray for me if my words exceed my deeds. There's no question about that. And many more words than deeds I've got. And that God be merciful with me. I'm trying to repeat the words coming from the revelation, but certainly I can't present myself as a model of this or anything like that. That's not that point. Again, Baha'u'llah says in one of his tablets, teach thou the cause of God with an utterance which will cause the bushes to be enkindled. And the call, verily there is no God but me, the Almighty, the unconstrained, to be raised therefrom. Say, you know this say is throughout the writing. It's also in the Quran. Say, you wonder what this is. Baha'u'llah telling us to repeat this, or it's God telling Baha'u'llah to repeat it. It's curious phrase. Human utterance is an essence which aspireth to exert its influence and needeth moderation. As to its influence, this is conditional upon refinement, which in turn is dependent upon hearts which are detached and pure. As to its moderation, this have to be combined with tact and wisdom as prescribed in the Holy Scriptures and tablets. Meditate upon that which hath streamed forth from the heaven of the will of thy Lord, he who is the source of all grace, that thou mayest grasp the intended meaning which is enshrined in the sacred depths of the Holy Writings. There's another quote. This could have been in the meditation section as well. Friends, this year and last year I had opportunity to be with one of the Baha'is who served in the Time for the World Center too. He was a doctor, Lame Fananapazir. He comes from a long line of the Fananapazirs were teaching in Africa and in Iran in the past. He's very erudite, but also moderate in the way he speaks. He speaks very simply and He's written a book that George Round has published called Islam at the Crossroads, which is a challenge to the Muslims to awaken to the nature of progressive revelations. So he takes the themes, various themes, and he presents them from Judaism, from Christianity, from Islam, and then the Baha'i teachings on the subject. Very systematically, very carefully coordinated. I've seen him in a teaching situations. Cheerful, radiant, not a touch of forcing anything on anybody. He invites people, look at this, look at this says, look at this says, look at this says. And creates an atmosphere in which they're totally free to decide to look or not look. And it seems such a good example to me. We're so used to preaching and people telling us what to do that I don't know if you might check YouTube. He's been traveling around the country speaking on this subject. You might find this there. It's an example of the style of exposition without coercion. And it leaves the people not feeling intimidated, should I accept or not accept this, except from the content of what's being presented. And pretty much, after one of his presentations, you can't kind of say, well, oh well, what's for lunch, you know? It doesn't work that way. You're faced with the challenge of seeing something so big and so important that you have to decide, is this true or not true? So without him asking that question, the question culminates in the conversation. How can we use material from the faith that way? The Guardian says, in our teaching work, we should say things that will provoke questions. Because then when the person asks the question, then they've engaged and they're interested in finding out. Like a conversation is going along and you say, well, that's true, the Baha'i writings say such and such. The what? The person asks, if they haven't heard of the Baha'i, they say, Baha'i writings, what's that? But they've heard the quotation and that's attracted them. So then they get curious and they ask something. Well, Baha'u'llah's teachings have been announcing that for 200 years. Who? Now we'll see there's another quote here that I want to quote for you later on. Where Shoghi Penny says that people have a right to hear the name Baha'i and Baha'u'llah. It's very important that that is in our speech. We don't have time to teach the faith to humanity and then a century later identify the source. This is not the time for that. And Shoghi Penny says once they've heard the name, because every soul has the capacity to recognize this divine name, most of the people are veiled so that they don't, but they have the capacity. So then, in a sense, you have fulfilled your responsibility to proclaim the faith to everyone. You notice he's saying the duty of proclaiming his message. Talks about teaching too, but not everybody's able to teach. What he says is that you proclaim the faith. If someone shows interest, teach them. So in a sense, proclamation is kind of at variance with the teaching of presenting a whole wide picture of the faith, an image of the cause of the world and what's the Baha'i, what the Baha'is do in Baha'i community. That's one thing. And that requires us to deepen and absorb away and think about the psychology of how we present it and think about who we're speaking to when we do present it so that it's measured for them. Abdu'l-Baha says we have a medicine chest with remedies for the healings of any disease. But he said, caution, be careful that you don't present one remedy sooner than it's appropriate. You need to, maybe a certain condition needs the one remedy, and then later on you can get the stronger remedy. We give the strong remedy and we kill the patient. That's not very helpful. They run away instead of embracing. So, counsel he gave to Dr. Getzinger, Edward Getzinger in the hood. He said that the cause of God has come to attract people to God. Beware lest in your presentation of the cause you give something, you offer something which becomes an obstacle. Even though it's true what you're saying. You know, I want to talk to you about the faith, but I notice your nose is red and big. I suppose you drink. You know, Baha'i said, no drinking. Absolutely no drinking. And the guy says, what else does Baha'i say? No, he doesn't ask anything more than that. That's enough. Now, it's truth, but it's in the wrong order. And we need to kind of weigh that. What are we talking about? What is the Baha'i? Well, Baha'i is a dynamic world community working at the grassroots level in all the countries of the world, establishing the laws of consultation and service to others and love of humanity. So, doesn't bother anybody. You can move on from there to other specifics. The whole purpose of the cause, Abdu'l-Baha says, is to attract people to God. Don't use in the teaching things that will become an obstacle to their drawing close to God. As they draw closer to God, they're able to tolerate laws, if you will, institutions. He says the first thing are the principles, and he said they're like milk. You give them milk and milk, gradually they grow teeth. After they have teeth, then you introduce meat, which are the laws and institutions of the faith. Good sense, huh? I have my newborn baby, and I love lasagna, and I try to feed the baby lasagna before it's weaned of the milk. That teaching should go forward with wisdom. I suppose it has implications of this sort, what you put in the content of what you say. And then you find that you're saying something from the teachings doesn't seem to have much effect, and you have to think over in your mind. Am I presenting it faithfully according to the way it is in the writings, or have I kind of added another emphasis that is really my understanding and not what's in the teaching? That's why this read and reread is important. Because when we reread it, we've already talked about with somebody and we've seen whether it's been effective or not. And it makes us look, oh look, I missed that. I didn't quite understand that. Abdu'l-Baha says each principle needs to be studied and meditated on its own to find the spirit of these principles. These spirit principles, he says, in Gaukel's Bible, he quotes the Master saying, they're the spirit of the age. And though many of them now are widely accepted and seen, yet one can talk about them as having arisen at a time when they were not at all acceptable. I mean, when Abdu'l-Baha was talking about equality of men and women, women didn't have the vote anywhere. There was still slavery in the world. There's all kinds of things that were going on. Now, if we proclaim the faith, and the person remains indifferent, doesn't say anything, doesn't ask anything, we maybe twice try, not necessarily that first meeting, but in another meeting, again, make mention of faith. Still no response. Then leave them to themselves. But what? Pray for them. Pray. Don't argue with them. Don't tell them that their lost soul is going to hell. That's not very helpful either. So all of this needs to be considered carefully. And once we engage in the teaching work, having read the writings and gotten the stimulation and been overwhelmed by the beauty and the power of the teachings, then we share each time in another mode of action. We were talking at the beginning about guidance requires motion. Shoghi Effendi says this prayer, meditation, and study, if it doesn't result in action, it's useless. Okay, you've enhanced your own knowledge, but if you don't ever open your mouth or seek to express it, then it just remains with you. And we've heard some simpler versions of that among the youth campaigns and so on. That, action, prayer or study without action is useless. Yeah. But the action we also is defined in the writings. What kind of action? These elements of proclaiming and teaching. For a long time, the proclamation was centered on reaching public officials. We thought proclamation means to tell the mayor what the Baha'i faith is. Here, Baha'u'llah is identifying it with every encounter you have with human souls. Let them know. I remember when I was a new Baha'i, they told me that the master had said, well, I think it was while he was in California, he says, if you're going to see a person one time, deliver the message. Say something about the message. If you're going to see them several times, live the life. Shower kindness on them. Prepare the ground. So you move in a new apartment house and you see the neighbor in the hall and you introduce yourself and you say, have you heard of Baha'u'llah? We're Baha'is and we want to teach everybody the Baha'i faith. Yes, it's true, but is that very helpful? Rather than that, say, I'm so happy to meet you, or whatever act of kindness, how can I be helpful to you? Or accept their offer to help you moving in and you may need help. Interesting points. More than once, if you know you will be running into these people, live the life. Prepare the ground. Abdul-Baha, likewise, he says, chant the words of God and pondering over their meaning, after meditation, transform them into action. Transform the divine words and admonitions into action. They're the source, the fuel, if you will, for our action. Another lovely letter about Baha'i life from Shoghi Effendi. His brotherly advice, they're all interdependent. They're a continuum, and they renew themselves. We go and teach, and then we realize we don't know enough, and we come back and read some more, and then we realize we're having trouble meeting people, and we pray to look for waiting souls, and the whole cycle that goes on. We have so many astounding promises in the faith. This one coming through this letter on behalf of the guardian. Just one mature soul with spiritual understanding and a profound knowledge of the faith can set a whole country ablaze. One. So great is the power of the cause to work through a pure and selfless channel. So also, after you read that, you say, okay, we need to look for and find prayers to ask for purity and selflessness so that we can become that kind of a channel. Obviously, we haven't all become that kind of a channel because the different countries are not transformed. They're coming along. The lovely Baha'i community here in Australia, I didn't know enough about it. I'm very happy to have this interaction with the friends in the various cities here, Sydney and Melbourne and now the north, Queensland. We've got all the potential here to really set the country aflame. Let the bushfires be your example. And the wind of the blessings and bounties of God push the flame on. While actively teaching, the friends must themselves be taught and deepened in the spirit of the faith, which brings love and unity. The goal of the faith is to establish love and unity amongst the peoples. Again, he says, naturally there will be periods of distress and difficulty, and even severe tests. But if that person turns firmly toward the divine manifestation, studies carefully his spiritual teachings, and receives the blessings of the Holy Spirit, he will find that in reality these tests and difficulties have been the gifts of God to enable him to grow and develop. How many times I saw in my own experience, making a plan to go teaching somewhere, became a bit complicated in Nicaragua. We went down to the wharfs and found out which boat was going to go through the jungle canals and reach the place you wanted to go. And they had their own reasons for what time they were going to leave. And sometimes you find they say, okay, come back in 2 hours and we'll go. And you get back in 2 hours and it says, no, they left an hour ago. They packed sooner than they thought, because they're mostly piling on all kinds of goods to take up the rivers and leaving these distant communities. Or you get back and the guy says, no, there's not enough business, I'm going to go tomorrow. Frustration after frustration, you know. Or you get in the boat and you're going up to the river where you want to go and the motor dies. And the guy says, oh, I didn't bring enough gasoline along. You're out in the middle of the jungle somewhere. Have you ever tried to sleep in a hammock with a mosquito net around the hammock and not put your arm or elbow on the mosquito net because it's going to get eaten right through the mosquito net, and still try to be comfortable in that hammock? It takes a while till you realize you don't sleep this way in the hammock. You sleep this way. If you turn sideways, you can be flat. It's a very strange mystery. I don't know how people who've been there a long time understood that. It took a while before they taught me. Meanwhile, my back was hurting all the time. And I was getting eaten on my elbows and that. So finally then you find somebody else going on in a canoe that has paddles, and the paddles don't run out of gas. It takes a few more days to get where you're going, but then you go there. And what do you eat along the way? Found it, stop someplace, there's nothing to eat, it's time to go to bed. You don't want to go to bed on an empty stomach. And the guys that are paddling the canoe get out and they make a little fire, and they make a little torch, and they walk to the side of the rivers, and along come about 50 fish. So with a machete, the guy's looking to see, like, what kind of fish would you like to eat? You know, it's like a menu. And he would go, and throw the fish on another one, and then they made these big baked fishes and so on. Solutions came in very strange ways on those trips. But I must say, some of the beaches, there was nothing but coconut palms. No people, no houses, nothing. So you ate green coconut. And I developed a beautiful rash on my tummy from eating too much green coconut. Entirely off the subject, but part of the subject. Surprises in the teaching efforts that you make. Willingness to kind of... How many times in the rainforest, I'm in a little settlement that has a kiosk, a store that sells sugar and flour and liquor, and not much else, and ask them, what do they know about nearby villages? And they say, well, there's a couple of paths out of the village. You could go that way. But if you don't get to the village, you get to a river. Then you may not see anybody there. Then you're stuck there until somebody comes along. How many times I've said prayers and set off on something, I walk 3 or 4 hours, get to a river, there's nobody there. But very shortly somebody arrives and says, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Like, you know, in the middle of this rainforest. And they take me to the village and talk about the faith. And then they paddled me on to another place or something. I've really gotten off the subject, but it is a question of action and following through. And this is the way you kind of learn the things. Now you're with people that speak another language. You want to tell them something, you're burning to tell them something, there's no way to tell them. Then this question of a radiant spirit and a smile and kindness becomes like the key element, you know. They haven't had anybody that would come and eat their food. They told us that the last group of missionaries came here to teach us, but they brought all their own food, they had their own tent, they prepared everything, they wouldn't touch anything of ours. You guys arrived hungry. One place, the very remote Indians told us, "We want to hear your message because you're coming like the apostles of Christ on foot and with no supplies." We thought we were getting along all right. We shot a rabbit in the morning. 3 of us were there, two natives and myself, and been walking all day long. We stopped and we made this rabbit stew. There's no water there. Mostly we're drinking water in the side of the road that was like coffee with milk in it. We'd boil it and put a pill in it to try to kill whatever we shouldn't be drinking. And then we'd strain it through our handkerchief into a cup so that we wouldn't have to chew it so hard. Meanwhile, while you're busy doing the water, native helper number 1 has salted the rabbit. When he goes to do something else, the number 2 guy salts the rabbit. And then I came and salted the rabbit. So we had this salty rabbit that you could hardly swallow, but we were so hungry, we chewed it anyway. Drink it down with the coffee with milk water. That was when they came and told us, "You guys are coming like we heard about the apostles of Christ." We hadn't thought that was that. We hadn't thought of that as a factor, but they did, and it made them open. And they brought us food then. Everywhere you go, there's different circumstances. How to apply these teachings and the call for sacrifice and the call for wisdom and teaching. Maria Conham, when she was in Argentina, these stories are, some of them are from the north of Argentina. She said, "Hooper, I want to go somewhere where the Baha'is have never been." I said, "Really?" You know, Shoghi Effendi said that there were places in the world where the Baha'i teachers would go with the Baha'i faith that had never been penetrated by Islam or Christianity. Still virgin, pagan places with their own teachings. So I chose a place on the map. It was about 65 kilometers from the nearest inhabited area where people weren't living in wickiups and little grass enclosures and things. And turned out it was a thorn forest with a trail, no roads, but some tracks. We went with a little pickup in these tracks, and about every half a kilometer we'd have a puncture of the tires. Well, we had a lot of guys with us from the native, who speak the native language. They would get out and plug the holes up, and somehow we'd go on. When we got way in here where nobody had been before, I mean, people had been, but no Baha'is had been there before. Maria Conham was installed inside a Persian. She'd made this herself with her cousin, net for keeping the bugs out, which had a funnel, and you crawl through the funnel, and then you bring the funnel of cloth in, and you tie it, and you're inside this square unit, you know. And she was in there, in a pigsty. And in the night, we were all sleeping outside. It started raining, and she said, "Okay, guys, you can't sleep out there in the rain. Come in here and sleep around my." And half years later, at dinner parties, she would, in the spirit of Reakanam, she'd say, "That man," she pointed at me, "took me on the worst trip of my life." And the guests would all look down like, "My God, she's going to kill him." You know? And when she got them all excited like that, she turned down and she said, "And it was also the best trip." Then she started talking about this. The rains came. We never did get the vehicle out of the... We had to walk out. We got a tractor that came and pulled a barge behind it. The whole thorn forest had filled up with water. And at one point, you can't see, I mean, you're going along the track, there was a huge underground ant hole. So the car went. Blah, 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 blah. Riakono had some animals with her, and they were at her feet in the front of the car, and she was saying, "Get the animals out, get the animals." Let's get Riakono out. Worst trip, but best trip. We finally got her out of there, and her cousin very politely said, "Kono, I think you need another companion." Kono was ready for anything, but some of the companions were really tough on them, you know, they're not used to that kind of thing. There was nothing to eat in this village. She said, "Well, we have to eat something, and they have to eat something," and she bought a few goats, and she had them all barbecued, and the whole village, we all had some goat meat at a feast. And that was a whole village that said they loved the faith, they loved Baha'i, and hope we come again. We all took refuge in Haifa. Here's a quotation which is like the forerunner of devotional meetings. As we have such wonderful prayers and meditations in our writings, the reading of these with friends who are interested in and crave for this type of small meeting is often a step towards attracting them to the faith. Perhaps you can start such an activity in your city. The importance of prayer and meditation. This during the Guardians ministry, and then the House of Justice, formalizing and making it one of core activities in all the local communities everywhere in the world. Again, the need of the hour is teaching on the home front. Its goals can be won by a new spirit of dedication and consecration on the part of the friends, each in his own country, in his own home. Friends, that's really the outcome and essence of the theme of the summer school, this service to the cause and the divine plan. What are we going to do in these next 4 years now to achieve the kinds of victories that the House of Justice is calling on us? All these victories, are not really for the House of Justice. They really end up being for us. Because all the efforts we make in the cause help us grow spiritually. They broaden our vision. They hone our smarts, if you will, the way we do things. You think Baha'u'llah really needs us to teach his cause? He says in a snap he can convert all of mankind. One verse will do it. Reminds me of a story that Juliet Thompson recounted. She was in Washington, D.C. with the master, and it had a full program. He had spoken on 3 occasions. It was, dinner time, and they went back to the hotel. He wanted to go back to the hotel to freshen up. But he had a fever, and he could hardly walk. He was dragging himself along. And Juliet was begging him to cancel a 4th meeting that night. And he said, "No, we're going." And she said, "Oh, Master, people love you. They don't want to lose you." She went on like that for a while, till suddenly he turned on her and he said, "With 1 verse, I can remove all my illnesses. But I don't do that, because I want the friends to see that they can serve even in time of illness. So take the pain in your side and go teach." That's the master thing. Take your exhaustion in your old age and go teach. And if you're young, take your energies and go teach. Never must they let a day pass without teaching some soul. That's a challenge to us all, our circumstances. We try to allow for some period in the day where we're out, or we're on the internet, or a phone, or something where we have all kinds of possibilities now that didn't exist before, of being in touch with people. Never must they let a day pass without teaching some soul, trusting to Baha'u'llah that the seed will grow. The friend should seek pure souls, gain their confidence, and then teach that person carefully until he becomes a Baha'i, and then nurture him until he becomes a firm and active supporter of the faith. Again, the pilgrim Shoghi Effendi talked about 3 stages in moving people from where they are to where they should be within the cause. First one is attraction. By speaking to them, they're attracted. The words appeal to them. What they're hearing, they like the Baha'i teachings. Finally, that comes to a point where he says it reaches confirmation. They say, I feel this is what I've always believed. This is what I always think. Of course, they never did think that before, but it strikes them that way. You hear so many people say that. So they're confirmed. And he says, I'm a Baha'i. I accept Baha'u'llah. Shoghi Effendi says it's still passive. That's passive still. They're not arising to do something. They have acknowledged the truth of the faith for themselves. The teaching work is not done there. You have to continue the teaching, nurturing, supporting of those individuals until they reach the 3rd stage, which is consecration. That is, become active supporters of the faith, not avowed believers. There's one process creates avowed believers. He says, and another process creates active supporters of the faith. How will we know when they reach that stage? Well, probably you won't have to drive them to the feast anymore. Or they will themselves, tell you that they're praying for confirmations for teaching or for whatever. And the third thing is they will start to sacrifice financially for the cause. It's kind of the hallmarks of that active supporter of the faith and not an avowed believer in the faith. As important as that is, we need to try to move people on. Now, in your own teaching experiences, when you follow through with the friends, with new friends, they get strengthened. I found it very difficult when I became a Baha'i. The friends talked about it as the hot potato act. You were the object of the love and adoration of everyone while you were learning about the faith, and when you said, okay, I'll be a Baha'i, they said, wonderful. Gone. Nobody called you anymore, nobody did anything. So this little hot potato that's dropped on the ground has to grow legs and start finding a way to exist in the community. And they say, you're a baby Baha'i, you're a new Baha'i. We didn't give you much space. and encourage you to do the things that we need to do. It wasn't always like that. There were some wonderful teachers. Followed through. Some followed through with me. I went through my test. I was attracted to the faith emotionally, not very intellectually. So whenever the emotion was gone, I didn't believe anymore. That wasn't very helpful. There was one stage, I'd been a Baha'i, maybe enrolled about 6 weeks, when I suddenly had an anathema to saying, "Oh God, oh Lord, where is God? Who's God? What am I talking about? I'm such a hypocrite," saying, "Oh God, who am I talking to?" I got in this crisis, you know. This dear Baha'i teacher that had, the first one I heard give the message like a nightingale. When I told her about my problems, she says, "Don't worry about that. I'll send you some other quotations you can use." She sent me prayers, and she removed "Oh God" and "Oh Lord" from all the prayers. I kept using those until I got my senses back. You don't find that in the Baha'i teachings, but you do, because it said teach with wisdom. Help the people to overcome the obstacles. Don't put obstacles in the way. Years later, I read Abdu'l-Baha says that whatever you imagine about God in your imagination, that's not God. If you can get it in your head, that's not Him. And he said that people have an imagination about what God is, and they address that. And I think most of us have God off distance somewhere. It's hard to get Him into your jugular vein, but He's right there. Of course, He's the pulse in your heart. He's the breath that gives you the power to reason and think. But He gives it apparently to you, you feel independent. Till you realize everything's coming from Him. That's such an important transition in our spiritual life. Because then you can lean on Him, you can depend on Him for all the things He's asking us to do. So this last line says, teach that person carefully until he becomes a Baha'i, and then nurture him until he becomes a firm and active supporter of the faith. This has become more institutionalized in certain factors of our present plan, like home visits, following through then with either people who aren't Baha'is or who have become Baha'is but need encouragement, and maybe they become a Baha'i in their house and they never come out to meetings, and it requires that they have visitors. And maybe you and I say we're too frightened to go there, so House of Justice says we should all accompany each other. So we have some company, we go visit these people. We pray ahead of time, we hope we can do something to move them a little bit further along the path. I mean, in doing that, we attract confirmations to ourselves, which enables us then to teach and do the job in a better way each time. Echoes of the opening quotations that we had. It's not sufficient to pray diligently for guidance, but this prayer must be followed by meditation as to the best methods of action, and then action itself. Even if the action should not immediately produce results, or perhaps not be entirely correct, that does not make so much difference, because prayers can only be answered through action. And if someone's action is wrong, God can use that method of showing the pathway which is right. Put ourselves in motion, ask for guidance, and then you get this course correction as you're moving along. Oh, that's not working, let's try this, kind of thing. Finally, there's this quotation just in the last months of his life. He wrote to his secretary to the American National Assembly, "A best teacher and an exemplary believer is ultimately neither more nor less than an ordinary Baha'i who has consecrated himself to the work of the faith." deepened his knowledge and understanding of its teachings, placed his confidence in Baha'u'llah, and arisen to serve him to the best of his ability. This door is one which we are assured will be opened before the face of every follower of the faith who knocks hard enough, so to speak. When the will and the desire are strong enough, the means will be found and the way opened, either to do more work locally or enter the foreign pioneer field. The Baha'is are the leaven of God, which must leaven the lump of their nation. In direct ratio to their success will be the protection vouchsafed, not only to them, but to their country. What an important role you're playing in the safety of Australia in the future. These are the immutable laws of God from which there is no escape. For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required. Having received the bounty of the cause, or having inherited it through our forefathers, we have this difference, this assistance which comes to us that the rest don't know anything about. And we see how people are suffering because we can't figure out what life is about. If they turn away from the faith, that's their business. But our business is to tell them what it is so that they can have a choice. And that, I think, friends, is the essence of action. There's a lot more material to talk about, but I think that concludes our thoughts about action. The action we should take. Course correction of action, moving, gives God the possibility, or the cause, or the House of Justice, whatever it is, to give us other ideas how we can vary what we're doing. But with us is this measure of how much we can give and sacrifice. And again, sacrifice is doing more than what we rationally decide we can do. That maintains the cause, but it doesn't advance it. But to sacrifice, the engine is fueled, and the whole enterprise goes forward. So, what are we going to do during these last months? Now, I haven't talked too much about the goals of your cluster, because I don't know much about them. But I think the other institutional members and agencies, either what you've heard today or if you seek out their guidance, will tell you what the priorities are in this particular part of the country. And then you can see how you can rise to address it. Thank you so much, friends, for listening and for inviting me to the summer school at your National Assembly. Kindly invited me. I was in New Zealand last year. There was a summer school with 900 Baha'is in the North Island. Huge summer school, the biggest one I've ever seen in the world. The big one in England one year was 500. That was amazing. But 900, and about a quarter of those were children. And they were about a quarter of them also were Pacific Islanders and Maoris. So they had a terrific flower garden of different colored picnic, children all over the place running around in the school. One of the friends who was there from Australia said, "Why don't you ever come to Australia?" I said, "I've never been invited." About 3 hours later, the National Secretary called me and said, "You know, you're invited anytime you want to come." Very kind. Thanks again.
Are there any questions just before we go? Yes, sir. Mr. Dunbar, I want to just thank you again. So how lucky we are to have you here and to inspire us with all
This one works. You want to come?
Yeah, just wanted to ask you a question that we live in Australia and we got such a lot of native Australian, and I feel like so inspired that I really want to us to set on that fire. I want to know how important it is to teach the native Australians. I know, I've been in up north Queensland, we've been working, it's a bit difficult there, but should we concentrate on some of us in that area more, or we just do it for the over Australia?
I think you have the institutions to guide you in that, but obviously the Aborigines are a very important minority in the country, need to be represented in the faith. And just because of the lack of the problems that they face, they should have a special outpouring of love from the Baha'is. I think the Baha'is that feel inspired should try to see if they can follow through with that. And some of the friends will be particularly moved by that experience. But see what the institutions of faith are saying about that at the moment. I know you have activities, you know more better than I do, around the country in some places that are Aboriginal Baha'is. But they're very disadvantaged by not having enough visits and enough maybe reminders. In that regard, I remember Ria Khanum teaching in the mountains of South America, and she went to a village and to give the message. And the people gathered, there were a lot of Baha'i visitors with her, and we went to this Indian village, and the chief of the village was polite, but he was a bit drunk. Khanum talked the faith to him, talked about the faith to him. And she said later, it's easier to teach people who are drinking alcohol all the time when they're drunk than when they're sober. So, yeah, that was interesting. So sometimes we're dealing with the Aborigines and they're half soused, and you say, oh, what's the point? But there is a certain natural, relaxed position that they have that maybe they hear each other. So be careful that we don't bring our own prejudices to their afflictions.
Good morning, Mr. Dunbar. I'm the one who was the only one who was asking questions the first time. People didn't finish it too. Would you care, please, to elaborate on something you said yesterday about two of the barriers to spiritual growth being one, self, and two, being passion? Because while conceptually that may exist, it probably looks different to different people. We all have our own understanding, our own limitations of what this might look like in the modern world and in the world which we live in, tempered by onslaught of societal influences and so on, or youth or so on. That was question number one, and while I have this, I would just ask that YouTube...
That's a pretty big question already. But
I know. This next one is a short one. Is the name of that doctor you mentioned to look for on YouTube?
Lame Fanana Pazir. Fanana Pazir.
Okay, I'll get that. Yeah, so, okay, we can just go to question
Some of the friends caught it up.
Yeah. Question number one then.
It took me a while to I won't tell you his nickname in the Holy Land. So as to the self and desire, you have the answer to that, or you want to have another question? No? Okay. Once you've heard that those are the two great veils, I think in your reading, particularly of the gleanings, you'll see how many places, and in the prayers, how many places those things occur. They're both, self of course is defined in the writings in two different ways. The self, which is the lower passions and ego of man, but there's also a self that's pleasing to God, and that's the character of the original soul, which he says is not stained by anything in this world. But I think the veil part is that lower self, what the Persian writings call the nafs, this lower character in man. And how do we overcome it? One of the very powerful clues, I think, that Baha'u'llah gives us, also this is in a tablet that's cited in the Gleanings, he says, simply, all good things come from God, and all evil comes from your own self. Which, if you flip it over, no evil comes from God, and no good comes from your own self. It's impossible that you do anything good, except that you're channeling the goodness of God. By submissiveness, by selflessness, he can act through you. He uses you as an instrument. And he says that in the writings here too. God can't use you if you're not selfless. You have to become selfless so that you'll be prompted and inspired by him. So, as far as collecting a record of wonderful achievements and services, you can do that, but just remember, that's all God's bounties. You can thank God that you managed to let him use you. And thus, the defeat of self is allowing God's will to act through us. Very good. I mean, these are the things life is about. You know, every minute of the day we're faced with decisions, choosing his way or our way. We also think we own ourselves. Dr. Baha'i says, for example, he says, suicide is tantamount to murder. Because you're killing something created by God that it's not your right to kill. Even though it's your own self. So you think, well, I own myself, I can certainly off myself if I want to. No. You're going to get charged with difficulties if you do that. How much more killing another soul, how bad that is. But of all the worst things, murder is absolutely the worst. When you think of these heroes with statues in the country because they led the army to the neighboring lands and slaughtered 200,000 people, and then they came back and they were the hero, General so-and-so. I mean, the whole world is upside down. God has made a planet, he's provided it with all the means so that we could all live a wonderful existence, have well-being. Requires cooperation and unity amongst the people. But we spoil it and we fight with each other. Then passion, the words of God, the use of the prayers, enables us, when we are prompted and tempted by our lower nature, to do things which are not according to the law of God. It gives us hesitation. That training is there. We're praying, that every trace of corrupt desire can be entirely mortified within us. We don't know when it's going to come up. I saw letters of the Guardian. He said that laments that how the friends get carried away by some infatuation that they have, and they lose the whole grounds with it, ruin their families and all this stuff. We all have to be thinking about that, asking for protection, trying to. In the writings it says God wants to be loved alone and above all that is. That means he wants to be loved more than you love your spouse. Abdu'l-Baha says if one of the partners in a marriage loves the other more than they love God, it will be a source of difficulties for the marriage. But love of God, that then inspires us with the correct love we have to have for our families, for our children, for the rest of mankind. It puts things in the correct hierarchical order and helps us to recognize passions and temptations when they come and try to deal with them. But don't lose sight of these two, because they're the great enemies. They are the evil whisperer whispering in our ears, you know. We want to do something and his whisperer says, look, I mean, the Baha'is are all doing these things. What's the matter? Why am I not enjoying myself too? I don't enjoy myself. Challenge, big challenge. All good from God comes from God. No good comes from your own self. If you remember that, then anything you do, you thank Him. If you're able to feel kindness or even smiling at somebody. Unless the smile is lascivious and wants, as his character, you know, some other response. Okay?
Mr. Dunbar, thank you very much for coming and spending a few days with us. And I have a very quick question, but I just want to first thank you for how generously you've shared of your knowledge of the Baha'i teachings and how generously you shared of your own experience in the service of the faith. It's all been very helpful for us to reflect upon. My question is, on the first evening you talked about different levels of growth. You mentioned the most basic level, the animal level, then at some point the soul becomes irascible, and the next level is the inspired level. Can you finish outlining what those levels are?
They're in a long tablet of Abdu'l-Baha, which is an interpretation of a Quranic verse about Rome is conquered or Rome is conquering. It gives a long explanation about what the verse means if you read it in the passive voice. And then if you read it in the impassive voice, has another meaning, also divine. Curious, so this is the Arabic language, has these two possibilities. Then he goes on to outline these stages of the soul. I think there's you can find it online, some of the sites that have provisional translations. I think there's one in Canada, BahaiLibrary.com, you can find things there. Stages of the Soul. It's also been translated by Mujan Momin and published, I believe, in one of the Irfan Colloquium magazines. I can't recite the whole thing for you right now. One last quote, friends, and I think the organizers have some program they want to go on with. When I was leaving Haifa, I found a tablet of Abdu'l-Baha in my papers. I had to go through 37 years of papers before I could leave and separate out what I couldn't take and what I could take. This one, Abdu'l-Baha says, the service of the friends belongs to God, not to them. Same idea. Nothing good comes from you. So this, I mean, how can you not stay humble in the face of that? How can you not stay grateful to God if you're able to perform some service? But He's confirmed you, He's arranged that. But all of the credit goes to God, not to you.